Welcome to the World Gaming Trade Show, the first episode for 2021. I am your host, the creator behind the in-game boss program, Jeremy Evans, aka your retro activist, aka your in-game boss. And I want to thank you so much for, listening to us for a very long time since the show started. But I didn't do this alone. I had somebody with me on this voyage since we started this, and he's still been here, and he's still with me, and he still enjoys this. Mr. Brendan from the Game Addict podcast. How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm doing pretty good. It's good to be here in 2021. Hopefully, we are doing a lot better by the time this is airing. Hopefully, all eyes are forward, and we're going to come into this with the right attitude. It's funny, guys. I've seen it a couple times coming into the new year. It's like everyone's like on pins and needles, like, don't anybody say this is going to be your year. Don't anybody claim it. You don't want to jinx it, all right? We're just going to let it be.
Right.
But no, I'm hoping. I'm hoping for a brighter tomorrow for sure. But things are doing good here. I lost my game room. And I was talking to you a little bit before we went on the air. Mm-hmm. I did lose it in a fire. You kind of had something with that.
Yeah, thanks.
I didn't lose it like in a disaster. No, basically my youngest kid has kind of taken over the room, and well, you know what? It is what it is. So now I don't have as good of availability to play some of my old retro games that I want to do because with the setup I have, hooking it up to my TV in the living room. I could do it, but literally my youngest is big enough to be able to reach up, and if I have too much stuff on our entertainment center, he could just grab up and yank it off. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't have that. I couldn't have him ripping off my Super Nintendo, my NES, my Dreamcast, whatever. So I finally did something that I didn't think that I would ever do, but because of the situation that I'm in, because I have itches to play some of my old games, I got a Raspberry Pi.
I see. Okay.
That was my Christmas present. I got a Raspberry Pi 4. And let me just say that I don't do PC gaming. No disrespect to anybody that does. The part of it that I don't like is the tinkering. Sometimes to figure out, sometimes you get your settings and everything runs perfect. Sometimes you're sitting there and you're like, man, why is this doing this? And you go in there and you got to tinker with the settings in your game, tinker with the settings on your all that kind of stuff. I don't like doing that. I like to just set it up and play. Mm-hmm. So the initial setup for the damn thing had me pulling my hair out, and I can't lose much more of that. Okay,
right?
I can't. Otherwise, I'm just gonna rock the Bruce Willis look all the time. But once I got it set up, it was pretty cool, and it was pretty neat to be able to turn it on. So far, I haven't had too much of like an emulation problem. I'm not sure where you stand on like an emulation or anything like that.
Oh,
for me,
all the way.
Okay. Because the way I see it, these games are 20-something years old, and I believe I can emulate Dreamcast on it, but it's not the greatest. But like PS1, I actually played through the entirety of the original Resident Evil 1, and it was fine. I had no issues.
60 frames? 60 frames?
I actually did not check my 60 frames, but I did notice the slowdown. I noticed some image flickering a little bit, or maybe some screen tearing is a better word for it, on like Link to the Past on Super Nintendo and like emulator, and I'm like, I wonder if I could fix that. But I fired up the PlayStation 1 just to see, like, man, is it worth it? Does this work to play this? And it did. I was impressed, and that was the first time I played through the original game, probably in like 15 years.
Yeah.
So it was a good time. It really was. And now that's tickled an itch. Yeah. And so because I was going to be doing some deep dives on the Resident Evil series, and that got me started. So now I'm playing the remake, so I can talk about both.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I have no problem with emulators. I have a bunch of emulators. Just I'm not going to name a whole list of them, but, from arcades to all this stuff. So I have no problem with emulations. I will not tell anybody where to go get their emulation or their ROMs. You're on your own on that. You're on your own, listeners, for that. I don't want anything come back at me. So go out there and find it. But, there are some games out there that are hard to find or very expensive. Yeah. So sometimes it's easier to find a copy and kind of just get a chance. It's almost like a museum to me now, like going through just the history of some of these games that I never got a chance to play and be able to kind of talk about it, or some of these games that are just I wanted to play but just didn't have the right time and the right place to get to them. So, so that's great for you. So, but that's the thing about this show, right? This show is about taking games, or picking games more exactly, that haven't been around in a while, kind of disappeared, or, something you've been craving. You ask yourself, like, what happened to this game? What happened to Gex? What happened to Duck Hunt and Kung Fu? What happened to Def Jam Vendetta? What happened to Radiata Stories? What happened to Musashi? What happened to Wing Commander? All these games that I mentioned are some of the episodes we did discuss, and we talk about those games and what developers we like to kind of bring them back to the surface with a new coat of paint. And this whole first year for us that passed of 2020 was a really fun ride. I think we started out in April. I want to say April or May, and we just kind of gone through it. This is a monthly show, and one of the funnest things about this about this show is the fact that we decide what game we want to do, not knowing, and then so we pick the games that we want to talk about without knowing what we picked until like kind of close to like the beginning of it. Like, when we did our last episode of Duck Hunt and Kung Fu, I would message Brendan the game of Kung Fu. He messages me Duck Hunt. And then we go off for a while, and then we come back with our picks. And we don't know what we pick until we discuss it. As we're recording this, we are learning what our picks and what we want to see from that game. And that's the fun of it. And for the listeners, I hope you have fun kind of just thinking in your head of what did we pick on top of who would you like to see make some of these games that been kind of gone for a while. So, Brendan, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, man, it's been a great time. It's been a great almost year. It's almost as you said, we started in April, and we've been going for almost pretty much every month since then. And I'm looking forward to doing even more episodes. And I just want to preface this episode by saying, so far, this episode was the hardest episode that I've had to come up with something for who we could have take over and bring these games back to life, because I didn't have this much trouble with Duck Hunt and Kung Fu, which normally you would think,
right,
those old school 8-bit games, man, how can we make Duck Hunt interesting? That was actually very easy for me, and my imagination went wild. Today, though, we are paying homage to some of these old school, like Nintendo Extreme Sports classics. All these games that we're about to tell you, I believe they all, other than one, originated on the N64. And one of them kind of started before that and had an entry on the N64. But since then, all these games have been quiet.
Yes.
They've been dead. I think maybe a couple of them had some entries on the GameCube.
Two out of those games lists, yeah.
But since then, everything, it's all been dead silence and quiet. So it'd be really cool to see these come back. And I will say that back in the day, dude, I rocked some of these games. I played them. And I played some other games in this genre.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't in a long time. And that's what made it hard, because I'm like, man, I remember this. Okay, that company's not around no more. Okay, how about these guys? No, they're not around anymore. Okay, so where'd they go? What are they doing now?
Right.
So I have some interesting ideas for some developers that aren't associated with Nintendo. In fact, I don't think any of them are. But also, it was hard for me to come up with a way to make these interesting enough, other than to say, hey, these guys that did this game, I think that's good, and they can bring some of that magic into this series with Nintendo. And then whether you have the developers do it or you have that Nintendo magic, somehow they meet in the middle, and it's like a cool revival of something that we used to have. Right.
So with that being said, let's talk about kind of the theme. This is one of our theme episodes. Our last theme episode was actually a Star Wars one. Definitely go check that out. We aired that around July. Really fun picks for those. Shadow of the Empire was definitely one of those picks, so definitely go listen to that. This episode here, let's talk about sports real quick. Now, when you were younger, the sports games that you normally play from the NES to like Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis were the NBA Lives and the Madden games. Those are your two main sports games. Shout out to Tecmo. Shout out to Tecmo Tecmo Bowl. Shout out to them. But it was mainly Madden and NBA Live. Your top two, both by EA at the time. There was nothing really out there. Now, you had some off sports games from there. You might had a couple of bike games. You might had a couple of, racing, skiing games and whatnot. There was some here and there, but they weren't big. They were more of like, let's just go ahead and add on it because maybe someone will like. I mean, hell, if you found one of the classic Super Nintendo ones with the Duck Hunt, track was on there, right? So there, there were some ideas there. But to be honest with you, and Brandon, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe since the dawn of the PlayStation in 1996, this is where we started getting a lot of the extreme sports games. And on top of that, that's when extreme sports started getting big. We're talking about Tony Hawk was becoming a big thing. Matt Hoffman was becoming a big thing. Shaun White was being a big thing. All these guys were becoming big stars. Skateboarding was finally getting the shout out they deserve. Like, we've been around forever. Notice us, And then the bikes started coming in. And then the snowboarding started coming in. And PlayStation kind of started that train. And of course, EA follows suit too. You got to do shout out to EA big, for the SSX tricky games in that whole series, 1, 2, 3, and then the last entry was like on the PlayStation 3 or something like that. And then of course EA big got kind of shiveled away, so they don't really exist anymore. Because those are the same people that also did Def Jam Vendetta. So just something to think about. And then you had the BMX series that were coming in there. The ATVs. ATVs was a big thing too, But with this, like other sports games that were on there were like Cool Border, Snow Kids, all this stuff. Everybody needed a hand in that cookie jar. Even Nintendo, which Nintendo did do a couple sports games, but they didn't really dive too much into. But the N64 was the console of throwing everything at it. Not only just Mario games, but that was the place where their sports series started kind of coming on the rise. Even some that really was graphically interesting. And what I mean by that is the reason why I played a lot of these off sports games on the 64 was because at the time they were beautiful at the time. And I'm like, I want to play that guy that looks good. I didn't grow up, and me personally, I didn't grow up with a PlayStation. So Brendan probably have a definitely different view of me, a different view of that situation than I did. But with the 64 being the top dollar at the time with graphics, that's when I saw these great sports games coming out. And I'm like, oh man, I gotta at least give it a try. And so, but Brandon, what about you? What was your dap into the extreme sports era?
Oh man, as you said it right there with PlayStation. Whether you're looking at Cool Borders, whether you're looking at Tony Hawk, Tony Hawk was a big one for me. Whether you look at Dave Mirra, Pro BMX, I played the crap out of that. I believe there was like 2 or 3 injuries into that or something like that. It was like you had Dave Mirra, you had Jet Moto. I don't know if you ever played that one.
Yep.
But that was, a weird hovercraft type deal. It was weird.
Right.
But like the original 2 Jet Motos were made by the same company that did Twisted Metal, the first 2 Twisted Metal games. So that's kind of where it started. And then going into later consoles, I kind of got out of it. They're like, especially during that era with the PlayStation era, playing those games, whether I'm borrowing them from a friend or whether I'm renting them from a rental store, which doesn't really exist anymore. Like even my local Family Video said, "Peace out." Just like a few weeks ago, they're gone. So last holdouts are leaving. The video rental space are gone, man. That's how we used to play games back. We didn't have enough money to just go out and keep buying brand new games. They dropped every single week. And that's how I got to play some of these, like some of the, I'd rent Tony Hawk Underground for like a weekend or something like that and play that. And then take it back. And, and then I had my fun with it. I had my fill. And that honestly, that's where the sports games in general kind of fell for me for a long time, was like that weekend, I'm feeling something different. Now let me play something different than my usual go-tos. And I remember, my buddies had an N64, and that's where I got to play at least 2 of these.
Okay.
Before. I did get to play those and try them out, but that was that's just kind of where it landed for me. Was mostly on like stuff on the PlayStation.
So our theme episode today is basically going to be dedicated to the N64 time, where three extreme sports games had been came on that console, and they were banger after banger after banger, all made in-house by Nintendo at the time. So that definitely showed that Nintendo can do sports games. Well, the extreme wise. I don't, any other sports game that has to have Mario in it, right? And so from baseball, basketball, the only thing they haven't done is football. Yeah. So, they did soccer. But other than that, like, this was their big moments, and these games did great on them. And there's actually one, out of the three, there's one that stood out of all of them to me. It's the best one. I can't wait till we talk about that one. But we're going to talk about the first one on the pick that actually started on the NES. This was the first one that came out on the NES, and we didn't really hear anything about it until the 64 time. I mean, there wasn't a Super Edition of this on the Super Nintendo, which it was like, why wasn't there one on the Super Nintendo? I don't get it, But it was till the 64 where we got to return to it, and by far, if I'm correct, based on critics, it's probably still the best and only best one out of the series that did very well. And I will do a shout out to Mario Kart 8 because that stage in Mario Kart 8 was awesome. And that is Excite Bike. And so Excite Bike was on the Nintendo. I never got a really chance to play it when it first came out. I played it later. That game is hard as hell for me now. I wish I played when I was little because I would get it. But man, making those jumps and trying to do those tricks, don't want to take that chance. I just want to win the race. But I did play the hell out of the 64 edition. Excite Bike 64 was amazing. Graphically, it was awesome. It was multiplayer crazy. It felt like it was really cool. So, Brendan, what's your experience with Excite Bike 64? If you did play it out of those lists of three, based on what we're going to talk about. So.
Okay, so that's the one I haven't played out of the two.
Oh, okay.
Or three. That's the one I haven't played. I did play the original, and in fact, I played a lot of the original more recently, because last year, it was either last year or year before, I was able to track down right after Christmas. It was one of the NES classics, and so that has Excite Bike. And over the last year, my oldest, who's 5, he plays Excite Bike all the time.
Oh wow!
And all he's doing is he's cranking that engine and making the dude flip over and fall and crash. And he's laughing, and he's making that engine overheat. And I'm just like, come on, man, just lay off. Like when it's beeping, you gotta lay off a little bit. And I mean, he's having fun. That's all that matters. But no, dude, Excite Bike, especially the original, has a charm. Like a lot of those old NES games do. Like they have a charm, whether it's like there's a certain like aesthetic about Excite Bike or like Punch Out or something like that. There is a charm to them, and some Nintendo games still have that charm to this day. If you go and you crank up one of the new games on the Switch, it carries forward, and that's something that's hard to capture. But that's what made it so hard by trying to pick somebody, by trying to pick a team that's going to be all right. What are we going to do with Excite Bike? Because it's got to have that charm. It's got to look and feel like Excite Bike, but it's also like it can't just be the original 2D Excite Bike again. It's got to be something else. And of course, one game series that's kind of carried forward that theme more recently at least in like the last 5-6 years was the Trials games.
Here it comes. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, right, so I did not go with them.
Oh.
I didn't go with them because I'm like, that's where you would go. And but no, there's another game that came out last year, and it's not a motorbike, and this is a bit different. But I'm like, if we could take their flavor and their aesthetic and bring it to Excite Bike, I think it would work really well. And the team is called Megadon Industries, and they made a game called Lonely Mountains Downhill.
Okay.
And where you're on this BMX bike and you got to race downhill, you got to flip and fly, and you're on the side of a mountain and you're doing this stuff. But it's kind of an isometric where you're kind of like, you're not like right behind the dude, and it looks like old school polygonal, but it looks fresh. It's kind of hard to explain. And so like I just think seeing what the Trials games do, and they keep that classic Excite Bike, grid. It's like, hey, we're all in a row, we're going through, we're going to try and win this race. But I think there'd be some cool different modes that you can do with tracks that aren't just row by row, like because when you look at like motocross or anything like that, you have like the big windy tracks and everything. Because I tried to play a motocross game like on PS Now this year, and I couldn't do it. I was awful. I just kept flying everywhere, and my kid wanted to try it and play, and he's flying everywhere, and he goes, "How do you do this?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but I don't. I'm just trying to play." But I just feel like it's got to have a bit of an arcade sense, because if you go too sim with it, then I think you lose the charm. I think it becomes too serious.
Yeah, it's not excite.
yeah, it's not that exciting, right?
Yeah.
So, no, and like the moment that I saw this game and like its weirdness and its charm, where like when he's racing downhill and they have these checkpoints and you got to pull off these jumps and everything, I'm like, that's kind of cool and different. That's more of a BMX thing or like a mountain bike type deal. But if you can have that same kind of deal with some tracks and some races, I'm not saying it's quite like RC Pro-Am. I don't know if you played that way back in the day.
I remember that. Yeah,
the track and like the little like remote control cars. It's not quite like that, but it's something that I feel like it could be chaos. And sometimes with Excite Bike, it's chaos. Everybody flipping all over each other. Trying to get them back up. The little dude, because every time you wreck an Excite Bike, when you wreck, you and your body and your bike always get transported to the side, and he's running back over to the bike to get back on the bike, get started. And that's the thing that I remember. And the thing is that you're probably going to have some different takes on this, because you actually did play the 64 version. Everything that I'm thinking of is based off that original NES version, and trying to bring something like that to now. And I felt like, what were they called again? Megadon Industries.
Okay.
I think maybe they can bring a charm to it. I don't know. What do you got?
So I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way. So the developers I'm picking, to be honest with you, they can do all the three choices that we can do. And I'm just going to pick I'm only picking them for one thing only. And that's Ubisoft. Ubisoft can do all of these choices we talked about based on what we have seen them lately in the last couple of years. Okay? But I do want Ubisoft to do Excite Bike just because of the way they did Riders Republic that was announced last year. Okay? But I don't want it like the way they're doing it, where it's like 1,000 people going down this hill, heavy multiplayer. I don't want to say it's like Battle Royale, but it's like first one down there wins, all that stuff. I don't want that. No. But I do want the multiplayer. Now with Excite Bike 64, it does play a tradition kind of like, just dirt racing. So, you have laps and all this stuff, but each biker has certain stats and stuff, you with, the sacrifice thing, like you can get more power, but you might sacrifice, can't brake very well, all that fun jazz, right? I think the thing I want from Excite Bike is to go a little bit more ridiculous with it. Let's make it really exciting, more arcadish, like you mentioned. I like that idea. But not only just dirt, like dirt races. Let's go a little bit more crazy, like, Sega arcade style. You're driving through a city, all these crazy events happen, you got to dodge through traffic, like make it a little bit more like chaotic when you're doing these Excite Bikes. If you want traditional racing, that's great. But if you want that like crazy, like anything could happen, like Burnout kind of thing, that would be really cool. I mean, even ridiculous tracks, like to the point where you could do, I don't know, you can do it in space. Like maybe there's a track in space and every time you go around, you go higher than you do. I don't know. Like I want it to be more ridiculous for Excite Bike to come back and not just be a traditional, like, here's a dirt race. And I want different regions, like let's do something in the desert. Let's do something in the mountains. Let's do something, these different ideas that they have, they can throw it. Now, they did have two different spin-off Excite ones. They had like Excite Truck and Excite Bot, but I think those are forgettable because no one brings those up. So to bring back that true love to me, I really would like them to go more ridiculous of just not just traditional tracks, but a lot of wild and crazy tracks that you can try out and try it with multiple people playing it. And then when you hurt your car and stuff, I want to see him run up to the bike and pick it up and ride it again. That'd be freaking hilarious. Even if he has to kind of, walk with it for a minute and then get going, that'd be That'd be
Yeah.
funny to me, you know? I'm not necessarily asking for a road rash either, but I do want a little bit of conflict. Like, you know, you can kind of bump them a little bit while you're driving and whatnot. But I can just imagine that, like, you're bobbing and weaving through traffic. Then you see this bridge about to break up and you got to ramp over it just in time to make it over there. You know, just something kind of like throw you out of left field when a track starts. And I would really enjoy that. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, dude, I agree with you 100%. Like it's got to be a little bit chaos. I'm not saying that we got to have those crazy air tracks like from GTA Online.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to do all this stuff in midair that doesn't make any sense and defies all laws of physics and gravity.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't. It's not. That stuff's kind of fun. I mean,
right.
Like, you know, like sometimes when I see all those people up there trying to fly around up there and do all this stuff, it reminds me of watching people play Fall Guys.
Yeah.
And then all these dudes like hobbling around and everybody falling off the track. You know, it's like, but still, like, you know, I want something that's gonna like capture a little bit of that old school nostalgia where it's got that dirt track, but I want some of that craziness too. You know, maybe not 100 players trying to get down the hill.
No, I don't want that.
Like that's overkill. But like maybe, you know, you get like eight racers in there or something like that. There's something that makes it a little bit more competitive. You know.
Yeah, I think this is something that hasn't been, I think, accomplished very, very much to it. But if they can do it like you mentioned, Fall Guys, and I kind of would like if you have a track, and it's one of those kind of like if for like Cruising USA, or would you say like Mario Kart 8 with the Wario Mountain, where it's just one in, there's no laps. You just drive to get to the end, which I like those better than going through a lap, because then they can just throw a bunch of stuff on your way as you get to the path. The reason why I brought this up is how cool would it be when you start the race and after you pass the first checkpoint, think of it as like Outrun. You know, you pass that first checkpoint before the clock starts picking up again, which, by the way, no clocks. I don't want clocks. Fuck that. Don't do clocks. But it's split into 3 paths. And you decide what path you want to go. And they're all challenging in their own way. You know? Like, you go left and you have to deal with a bridge or something like that. You go center, there's a lot of traffic that way. You go to the other side, you have to deal with, you know, more of a residents and casual and like civilians and stuff like that. They all equal out to make it to a certain point, and then you finish the last checkpoint just straight up. And that would just bring so much different flavor, because like that keeps you want to replay it over again and see whether this path go this time or this path, or you know, you get to decide like, well, which one is quicker, which one is not quicker, you know? And it's almost kind of roguelike, but it's not roguelike. But I think having different paths to get to the end would be awesome, because if you're doing 8 players and you and another person race to go one way and 2 people the other and the 2 people the other way and whatever, it's going to be crazy while you're racing. You're seeing your rank number go up and down. Like, I'm in 5th, I'm in 4th, I'm in 3rd, I'm in 5th again. Wait, what is going on? I don't know. I like that chaotic kind of feel. Like, crap, I gotta go faster. I gotta go faster. And so, I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that all roads lead to Rome kind of deal.
There you go. Yeah.
Because it does open that up to where along the track, it's not like you're picking, you know, easy, medium, hard. You're picking different obstacles to overcome, and maybe there's something that you as a player, you do race better going down the middle because of you're more versatile in that, like, and within that challenge set. Or maybe you're one of the other guys, or maybe you don't care. You're just like, let's go do this thing. And I like the idea of trying to split up the racers too, so that way, when you're trying to race and you got 8 people, you're not all always on the same screen bumping into each other. Maybe it's only just a couple of you. And then, as you said, near that end, now you're on that last straightaway. And like, it all depends on how many get there at once. Now, like, the game is on. It's like, say you get there first, but then the dude who took pathway number 1 and you took number 3, he's right on your tail. And you're like, oh, crap. And then he's like, oh, man, I got him, man. I went through there but you guys had completely different experiences getting there, and I like that.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part, is always having a different experience every time you go in a race, you know? And I would love to see the path you go in the mountains, the path you go in the desert, the path in the urban city, you know? There's so much creativity they can do at Excitebike to bring that back, and it feels fresh, and it feels like it's not copying too much from everybody, you know? And I think they can really do that. And I think Ubisoft so far is really good at making an open world, since with Steep and the new game, they have that money to do that. Now I need to go look at your game because I didn't get a chance. Now that you mentioned it, I need to go look at them and see what they can do with that, because, you know, they might be really good at some ideas of their own. Now, I'm wondering, based on their game, do they have a lot of kind of crazy ideas?
I mean, it was really neat watching that, because as they're going down the path, and there's this, as you said, it's not a lap system. It was just racing downhill, and there are checkpoints. That way, if you fall off the mountain, it kind of sets you. It doesn't set you back up at the beginning. It sets you back up at your checkpoint, but you are timed to try and reach the point A to point B as fast as you can. And then, of course, like you're going, like you're skirting around, you know, close to the edge of that mountain, or you're trying to do a jump or trying to do something here. I thought it was really interesting and different, and I liked the visual aesthetics of it, because it reminded me just a little bit of like that Excite Bike flavor. And so like I like that idea a lot more than just because when I saw like I thought of Trials, I'm like, but Trials is just really just Excite Bike, and we've already had that, you know, and that's cool. And I love the fact that we still have a way that is that old school side view, like Excite Bike, and I love that that's there, but I don't necessarily. That's not where I went. I wanted to do something a little bit different with it. Maybe there's a way when you do release the game, you could have that classic, just old school track, that old school view mode, if you will, the old school Excite Bike mode, or you can have like the new mode or whatever, you know.
Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and get on to our next game. The next pick that I'm going to talk about is the first game that got me in to play other extreme sports games. And at the time, it was probably one of the most graphical, best-looking games on the console. And I believe it was part of the launch of a couple of launch games on the console. And I spend so much time playing this game, and anybody that played it with me got hooked too, because it's just so much you can do in that game, and mainly it's for the tricks. Like I did the barrel roll, I did the double flip, I did all of this, and to this day, I would love a new entry on the Switch or future ones, because it deserves to come back with the multiplayer, and that's freaking Wave Race 64. That game is so amazing at the time, and surprisingly enough, it just became a big thing. Like, I don't think Nintendo anticipated that Wave Race was going to be a big thing. I think they were really doing it more of a tech demo to me, of like, look at the way we did the water, look at the way people are going into this, because I think some of that influence went into the Star Fox 64 and other games later on. But Wave Race was one of my favorite games on that 64, and I love it so much. Brendan, what about you?
So I didn't play it as much.
Okay.
I played more of the other pick.
I'm like 0 for 2 now.
I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, it's all right.
Okay,
it's okay.
Okay,
you know, this one was challenging for me.
Okay,
This one was challenging for me. So I'm interested to see what you got.
So before I do my pick, let me ask you this: did the game didn't grab you, or did you think you didn't really have enough time to play it? You know,
it just wasn't one that we played a lot back in the day. Like,
okay,
like we put it in, but we always gravitated to other games.
Okay,
so like. Because I didn't own it in 64, so like it was always like my buddies, and like
that's where I wanted to hear. Okay,
yeah, like one friend had it, and it would be in rotation, and we played a little bit, but like he played it way more than we did, and he was way better than we were.
Okay, so you do have to admit something to me. That water was freaking awesome at the time, right? That water was something else. Like, I don't know why Nintendo did a great job on that water, and then when they did Blue Storm on the GameCube, my gosh, I was like, they know their water. They know their water. I mean, Mario's been in it for years, so they know their water. And so, Wave Race, yeah, that, you know, there's not a lot you can do with Wave Race, really. I mean, other than make it like graphically phenomenal and stuff like that. If you really think about it, it's almost like F-Zero with water, and that's what they can do. They can just make it a little bit faster in a way with customizations to even adding bonus characters to it. Like, you can add these racers, but you can add bonus characters too. Like you can have Mario, Princess, and all of them kind of wear outfits to put in there, and that would be pretty cool. Even to make designs on your own, your own ski boat or whatever you want to do and everything like that. The courses just have to be a little bit more fun. And then just like Excite Bike, the unexpected. And I think that's what gamers like now, is just unexpected events that happen while you're racing per se. Like maybe a giant wave comes, or, you have to leap over a group of people, doing something, or even to the point where there's a cruise boat and you have to ramp over that cruise boat, or maybe you're racing through there and then hopping back in the water. I don't know. It's just a bunch of crazy ideas that they can do to do that. But mainly they just need to make the stages really more memorable, just like the old ones were. And the developers I picked, their backstory of gaming is pretty phenomenal. They're like the jack of all trades. I never really pay attention to them until I look at the list. Like, they did these games? So this developer did Outrun 1 and 2 on the PS2. He did Forza Horizon 2 for the 360. They did Little Big Planet on the PS3. They're doing the new Sackboy that's coming on the PS5. They done both Sonic racing games, the Team and the All-Star Racing Transform. Sadly enough, I hate to put this game out on them, but they botched it. They did Crackdown 3. They did actually worked on Dead Island 2, that's still in development as we speak, but then got kicked out in 2019 after working on it in 2016. And then they did some virtual tennis. And the group is Sumo Digital. And based on the library of games, they have done the racing, they have done sports, they have done the kind of the friendly games. And I can see them doing this game and making it bright. Like, Wave Race can be bright, because that's what it is. Wave Race is bright. It's 80s swallow the ocean, okay? Like, 80s everywhere in this. And this is true. If you go look at 80s ski outfits, people, in the water, everything, the clothes looks like it's 80s. Even going to the mountains to go skiing and stuff, it's very 80s looking. And that's what they should do. Like, crazy, awesome colors. It should be super bright, exciting, blues everywhere. Make Wave Race very pizzazz, I guess. Like, make it really shiny and very sparkly and whatnot. And Sumo has shown us this through their library of games. Forza Horizon, even though they ported it on the 360 and whatnot, Forza Horizon it's an appetizing game. I played the first one. I like the first one, and I don't even really play racing games, but I like what they did there. It's bright, it's fun. They break the rules. Like, hey, you just need to get to this spot. We don't care how you get there. Go there. I'm going through fences. I'm going through a forest. As long as I get to that point, and maybe they can do that with Wave Race. Just like Excite Bike. There is a point that you need to get to. We're just gonna show you how big your range is. Have fun with it. So yeah, I picked Sumo Digital for this pick. I think they can really do this one. So
that's really cool. And what's really neat is that I was wondering at first if you were going to say the exact same developers that I picked, but we were close, because you said on PS2 would they do Smuggler's Run?
Yeah. No, I said Outrun.
Outrun.
Okay, yeah, Outrun, yeah.
Okay. So, where I first played a game from these guys was on the PS2.
Okay.
For my developer. The irony is that when I look through the games, well, that's funny. So, the development team is called Rainbow Studios.
I know where this is going. I looked them up too. Yes, go on. All
right. So, I know them because of ATV Off-Road Fury.
Mm-hmm.
Great racing games. Those are awesome. They also developed the sequel to Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. The pod racing game on the old 64, dude. They did Star Wars Racer Revenge, where it was the next pod racer game. And of course, they would also go on to do the MX versus ATV Unleashed games and all. Like the series has continued on. I'm looking and I'm like, holy shit, they did Splashdown. Which is another ski boat racing game. And I'm like, well, I guess they've done it. So I guess they know how to do it.
Now, was that for the Xbox?
It was for PS2 and Xbox.
Okay.
And they did two. Because the second one, Splashdown, Rides Gone Wild, was only on the PS2. And the Xbox version was planned but was canceled.
Okay.
And that came out in 2003. But like what really drew me to them before I even realized that they had actually dabbled in that genre, because I had never played Splashdown. I didn't even think of that. Was the ATV Off-Road Fury and Episode Pod Racer connection? I'm like, man, these are a good developer. They dabbled in the extreme sports thing, and it feels good. Like those first couple of ATV Off-Road Furies are fun to play, and it's not in the water, but I feel like if you could take that same aspect to what they achieved with the Off-Road Fury games, I feel like you could do it. Knowing that they dabbled into the water now just cements it for me that these guys would be a good pick to bring back a wave race. But I would, again, just like Excite Bike, I would want it to look not so 100% realistic. Because even though the water looks great in this 64, like again, there's a certain flavor with Nintendo.
Yes.
When you're hooking up with Nintendo, there's a certain flavor about what the game's got to look like. And I never did play Wave Race on GameCube. I never played that one. I've heard people talk about it and heard it's really good, but I never played it. And I've never really come across it with my collecting. Maybe that's something to look out for. But even again, it's like I remember us playing the original, and like it was a little challenging.
It is.
It was a little challenging, to combat those waves and race. But I'm not sure why we just we always we would play it for a little bit and we'd go off. We'd play like Cruising USA, or we'd play Wrestling, or we'd play Goldeneye or something like that. Something that there was a lot of my buddy had a lot of games.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of games, and he had enough controllers for all of us to play. So nothing really kept our interest for too long. But I kind of feel like they would be good. And I like your idea too, maybe having a little bit more of an open deviating course, whereas maybe the course that you're on is a whole side of that ocean front.
Yeah.
And your course starts here, and it can deviate. You can go a little bit closer to the coast. But say when you get close to the coast, you get closer to maybe you have more risk of hitting the land, and it slows you down, or something like that. Or you have how the land or how it kind of comes out a little bit, so you can't be so close, but it kind of makes you push close. And if you're further out, maybe you get maybe you even have some surf that you have to try to combat against. So
let me ask you this. Would you think a story development could work for this game? Say you're a character and you're trying to be this big, awesome new person in there, and that involves you doing certain races or doing certain things little challenging stuff to help level up your ski, your ski jet boat, whatever, to be more powerful. Yeah, to kind of make it better for better races and whatnot. Get used to different characters. I don't know. Do you think that would work for Wave Race, or would you think that should just be traditional, just racing? I'm not sure, because when you're talking about that, there's a little bit of that kind of progression in Forza Horizon 4 or something like that, where you're racing and they interact with you like you're a part of the story, you're moving along, and they're you're this up and coming racing star, part of the circuit. And that could be kind of interesting. And then of course you got upgrades to the boat, you got sponsorships to where you can get more money per race, and then get those upgrades to the boats. And I don't know, maybe you get different neon 80s looking wetsuits that kind of
improve your aerodynamics or something. I don't know,
Okay.
but
Okay.
just something. No, like I could definitely see something like that, like a progression type deal.
I will say this, and this is the cheat for me. This is spoiled to Jeremy exclusive. Is if you can just do the whole game soundtrack in 80s music style, I would love it. I would love it. I mean, I'm talking about, I'm going from Kenny Loggins. I'm going from all of it, you know. Danger Zone. Like, I'll go right into it. Let's just make it all this awesome. I don't know. When I think of beach stuff like that, music, 80s just comes to my head. You know, people just running on the beach and everything like that. And I think that music style would work. I can't really remember the 64 music. I might have to listen to it again. But yeah, that could work. All right, let's get to the last one. The last one that Brendan probably played the most of. I played enough to talk about it. And you know, this was my hardest pick. This is my hardest one. So, Brendan, I'm going to let you take this one.
Yeah, so the last pick is 1080 Snowboarding. This game was the shizness. We played the crap out of this. And it was fun. A lot of that downhill, kind of like snowboarding type deal. And it's a bit arcadey feeling. And you can do all these different twists and flips and like grinds and stuff. Now, they would go on to have different games in that same genre, like we already mentioned SSX and games in that era. I chose not to go that way for my developer because I went with a company called Vicarious Visions.
Okay.
Because it's something they just released this past year that it blew me away how good it was. And they're the ones who this year released Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake.
Okay. You're talking about from Activision, right?
Yeah, they are owned by Activision.
Yeah.
They also are the same developer who did the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy. But when you go back into their history, they were doing games like Spider-Man on the Game Boy Color. They were doing games like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 on the Game Boy Advance. They were working on the handhelds, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 on the Game Boy Advance and PlayStation. So there's a PS1 version of Pro Skater 4, and they did that version.
Okay. So
like this wasn't an A team, man. They were kind of the B team, maybe C team of developers back then. And then of course over the ages, it's like, they made some Crash games. They made Crash Nitro Kart for all the different versions, from the Game Boy Advance, GameCube, PS2, Xbox, the Nokia N-Gage.
Oh, goody. That phone game console thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, your dedicated phone taco. Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
Gosh.
But like they have a lot of different stuff kind of going on. Throughout the years, they've touched a lot of different franchises. Guitar Hero, Transformers. Of course, they're within that Activision window. They developed Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 for PS3 and 360. That's a great game. But knowing and having played the remake Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, when I played 1080, it reminded me when I played Tony Hawk just maybe like a year or two later. Oh man, this reminds me a little bit of like what they did with 1080. And knowing that SSX does their thing, and like that would be easy to do, but that's just it, man. It's like when you have an arcadey snowboarding game, they're gonna look a lot alike, and they're gonna like when you see it, like, oh, that looks like 1080. It's not 1080, but that's SSX tricky or whatever. Going here, seeing what they did, they weren't the original developers of Tony Hawk, but they worked on the Tony Hawk series throughout the years, so they had some experience.
Yeah, with Neversoft before they kind of shiveled up a little bit.
Yeah, but then like they did not develop Tony Hawk 5, which was like apparently just hot garbage when it came out. But now the company coming back with this, and this one's really well received. It's like, wow, this is awesome. This is nostalgia. And I feel like if you team these guys up with Nintendo to bring back 1080 snowboarding, they can sprinkle some of that magic, because it's not like they're strangers to this genre. They've been around, even though like all the way gone back on the handhelds and then on the newer consoles. They get it, they understand it. I'm not saying I want Tony Hawk 1080. I'm just saying if you're gonna pick a team, because I don't even know if the team that did SXX is still around, or anybody that's
No, because it's EA big, so they're no, that's not gonna happen.
You know, EA big is long gone. EA isn't even like, dude, I can't even like. There's only so many companies that are in EA that I can even tell you what they even do.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's like I know that like BioWare's still around somehow. EA hasn't taken them out back and shot them in the head.
Give it time.
Yeah, right. The company that did Dead Space, they're no longer around.
Yep.
You know, Maxis, they you know, SimCity and all that stuff, like they're dead. The company that's doing they did a Respawn, you know, Titanfall, and they did the
Jedi game.
Yeah, Jedi Fallen Order. You know, like yeah, they're still around. You know, like I don't even know what the teams that make FIFA and Madden are called, but
yeah, I think they're in-house, and then also too, they just acquired Codemaster Studios. Yeah. So they bought them. So that's interesting. So you have to look that up.
It just sucks with EA because you have all these talented people who make these awesome games, and then of course flavors and change, you know, tastes change over the years. You know, like with the Tony Hawk series, there was just a buttload of Tony Hawk games. A lot of them were really good, and they started kind of tapering off, and then they just bye-bye, you know, gone with the wind. Guitar Hero was the same way. You know, it got really popular. It was really fun. And they got more money. They got more bands. They got more licensed music. You got Rock Band. That was the other side of it. And it just tapered away, went away. And so it's like, to know that they were able to bring back a game, 2 games, Tony Hawk 1 and 2, that were really great back in the day. And really, to be honest, even though 1080 preceded Tony Hawk, 1080 Tony Hawk lit this whole genre on fire. And it got like, that's why you had so many different skateboard games come out after that. You had so many different BMX games. You know, Cool Borders was already a thing, but that got propelled. You 1080 was a thing, and you could almost argue there was like you know, Shaun White snowboarding game. I remember that game. You know, SXX was after that. So a lot of that you can thank due to the success of Tony Hawk. And you got the team that just worked on Tony Hawk coming over to 1080 trying to make that into something where it's like, man, snowboarding games are hard to try and innovate. You know, you could do the same thing that we've already said, having differential paths and everything, but like it's so hard because it's so arcadey, and you're going down, so like going real fast, doing jumps, big bunch tricks, flips, but you can't flip your board because your feet are attached to the board, so you're just doing full body flips and all that stuff. It's a very hard game. So that's why this series and this episode was very difficult for me to wrap my brain around how to innovate and do something today. Because, yeah, these are games that we've seen, but these are games that, I mean, 1080 to me is nostalgia. You know, it does have a nostalgia bug in me, just like Tony Hawk 1 and 2 did. And that's why I think these guys would do great. I'm interested to hear what you have ideas for, because my ideas were not very good, like as far as like what I could do new.
Well, we can always say Ubisoft is probably the only people that actually took snowboarding to the next step by giving it more diverse, right? You're not just snowboarding, you're also skiing, you're also doing this, and they're giving you this open world to pick areas per se to go do the next challenge. You know, I think even paragliding you can also do in that game.
What's interesting is that it was that was steep, right?
That was steep, yes.
That, not with the fact that, you know, actually no, it actually does go more into it than I thought. Like, so did you play the newer Forza Horizon, like Forza Horizon 4?
I honestly only played the first one. I've been watching some of the Horizon racing games, but I don't have an Xbox to really try them out.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, if you have a PC that can play it, it's on Game Pass. If you have an Xbox, get it on Game Pass. That's how I played it. I have not played a racing game in so long, and because I had Game Pass, I was able to play it day one when it came out. And I loved it because it was arcadey, it was fun, but then you had this big open map, and you had different race types. You had dirt race types, you had street race types, you had more of the GT style racing. It gave you a lot of different flavors, and it gave you like a lot of different goals to achieve. And steep, when you were explaining steep to me, where like it's a little bit snowboarding, a little bit skiing, a little bit paragliding, and you have this big mountain that's kind of this track, big place where you got it kind of reminded me of that. They took aspects of Forza Horizon and brought it to this, and that could be a cool idea as well. Maybe even with what we said a little bit with Wave Race, but with 1080 snowboarding, you could do a kind of a Forza or / steep thing where you could have a little bit more arcade version of that, where because I never played steep, so I didn't know. I don't know how arcadey that is, but it's something like that with progression in mind. Maybe you could do maybe you could do something cool with skiing, because like how many cool arcade style skiing stuff is there?
Right. So I want to say for all three of these games, multiplayer has to be implemented online, hands down. Just depends how many people you want to go against each other. 1080 is a little more challenging because the fact that on the 64, 2 people made sense. One-on-one, race down the hill. I can't tell you how it would be with 4 people. I just don't know. I mean, it could be a little uncomfortable because you can easily get knocked down from a snowboard, and trying to get back up is probably more hell. I never snowboarded before, but I can tell that it takes a minute to get back up. It's not like a skateboard where you get up and you run a little bit and get going. No, it's like your feet is attached to the board, right? I honestly think it needs to be more arcade-ish, because it needs to be more fun that way. I mean, realistic is good if you really want to race, and of course, there could always be a mode for that. But to me, I think we're at the point where I think it needs to be a little bit more arcade-ish style, and just what you can do going down a mountain per se. And you're right, there's not a lot of choices compared to biking and water racing, because those have a little bit more options. Snowboarding and skiing only has one thing and one thing only. You need momentum by going down a hill. I mean, that's it. So the only thing you can really do to it is throwing these different obstacle courses through there with different challenges, like don't hit a tree while you're going down this thing or whatever. And I guess like you could do more of a open thing about it, or you can just be more ridiculous and have more different little challenges in there. Like, like I said, like I think Steep had one where you can do the giant big ramp and see how far you can go. I mean, that's one they can do. I think 1080 did it, where you ramp off something and see how many tricks you can do all you can and then land. You can do that again. Maybe you got co-op. That'd be really cool. You both go off at the same time and then see who can do all tricks at the same time. I mean, that can be a little intense because you're trying to keep an eye on him or what you're doing there. You two have to work together, going through a path together, So maybe more co-op would be a little bit more cooler idea. Or, you could do like Riders Republic, all for one. Just all go down the place with the boards and just see whoever makes it at the end. So I want to pick EA, and I actually looked at Activision, but Activision EA are very money-hungry people. So working with them can be a little bit challenging there. I think it'd be a clash between, because Nintendo, you got to have the Nintendo charm on there, but Activision is like, no, you got to have all this stuff or people are just not going to buy it. That's a huge clash. If there's some way where they would let them do the game, the developers you pick, without Activision really, taking true control of it, I think it work 100%.
Well, thankfully, they're like with Activision and maybe like an Ubisoft, you do have some of that partnership there with Nintendo, where they've kind of like helped, like, hey, go ahead and do this. Even with Ubisoft, they did a whole portion. I believe it was called Starlink. Starlink. It went to other consoles, but the whole Star Fox part of it, where like it was made, and the Star Fox stuff was only on the Nintendo thing. So like there, and also Ubisoft did Mario and Rabbids, right?
Right.
They did that partnership. So so maybe like. Ubisoft's like, between EA, Activision, Ubisoft, they're one of the pillars of like big publishers that have a lot of different teams. Just beat an Assassin's Creed game, you'll see every single team that's ever existed in Ubisoft had something to do. They colored a tree And like that Assassin's Creed game, and that whole team, everybody who works on that team is going to get their name listed in that credits, because you beat a Assassin's Creed game, you're going to be sitting there for like 3 days looking at all the credits and all the people who worked who works for Ubisoft. But it's possible. It's possible that you can have that. I hope that money would not get in the way, especially when you're looking at like Nintendo. As much as I love Nintendo, and as much as most of what they do usually hits the mark, I actually would like to see them venture out to tap some of these other teams and say, hey, would you be interested in teaming up with us to doing a thing just for Nintendo? And I would hope that if it was a project like 1080 or Wave Race or Excitebike or whoever, that they, like within Activision and EA, they understand this game's going to the Switch. It's not going to Xbox. It's not going to PlayStation. Not going to PC. So therefore, the amount of their concern of what that game needs to be will hopefully be a lot less, because they're not looking at the whole broad spectrum of trying to sell this game to a PlayStation guy or an Xbox or PC guy, where it's like, this is a product for the Nintendo fans and the Nintendo ecosystem, and that's it. And that's where we have that agreement. It's a monetary agreement that we already understand. It's going to sell probably within X amount of copies. It's going to be a cool project for us to do, and hopefully deepen in like the partnership between us and Nintendo going forward for games that could be on a more broad spectrum that we're trying to bring over to Nintendo. And sometimes Nintendo is really picky about what games they want on their system, but they've been really a lot better about that on the Switch for allowing a lot more mature content and on that front. So I think it would hopefully be a good, a fig leaf or like an olive branch, or hey, let's work together. Let's do this project, and all for good fortune going forward in the future.
I hope you're right. I hope that does happen. But out of those three, Ubisoft is the only one that has been a really good connection to them. And the only reason why I say that, because like I did an episode a while back in November. You can listen to it on the In-Game Boss podcast itself with my buddy Jerron. We did EA versus Nintendo, and EA has been a difficult arrangement for Nintendo, especially like the new Mass Effect trilogy that's been announced. Nintendo's not even part of that. Mm-hmm. It's a little upsetting to hear about that, even to the point where you have Tony Hawk 1 and 2, and that's not even coming to the Switch. And that's perfect home for the Switch, but we're still not seeing that. And I'm hoping that maybe it'll get announced later, they change their mind or something like that, because those games deserve to be on Nintendo. Especially Mass Effect 3 was on the Wii U, which is like, why? Like, why is 3 on there and not the other 2? That doesn't make any sense. Either put out the trilogy, which they did the trilogy after. I don't know. EA and Activision are weird in their relationship with Nintendo. Ubisoft is the only ones that really kind of works really well with them and whatnot. But my pick is Namco.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Namco also has a really good relation with them. Even they had a couple of snowboard games on their console. Now, they're nothing to brag about. You got Wii Ski and something else. But they have dabbed in the kind of the sports game. I remember like in the arcades, they had a horse galloping game where you're on a horse galloping on it, and it was like a horse race. So they had dabbled in sports racing games and arcade stuff. I think they do really well because they have helped out with a lot of stuff that they have. I mean, they helped out with Smash Brothers and everything like that. They're really good at making really fun just action games. And I think they would really do well of maybe not so much of making the gameplay, but their designs behind it, but really good.
Yeah, they've also teamed up with Nintendo with the Mario Kart arcade.
There you go. Yeah, that's very true.
Like if you go to the arcade and you see it's usually like a 4-cart setup, and they're all linked. So if you got 4 people playing the Mario Kart arcade, you guys are all in the race together.
That's right. That's right.
And it was developed by Namco with the blessing of Nintendo, and they put Pac-Man in there as a playable character because Pac-Man's Namco. Yeah. So yeah, and they have a good relationship going back a long way with partnering up with Nintendo. And you know what I was going to say before you said Namco about companies that work well with Nintendo, and you said Ubisoft is probably one of the best ones other than also Namco. In EA and Activision don't. The other two that came to mind were Square Enix, working with Nintendo a lot, and
Better
Microsoft.
now. Yeah.
Microsoft working with
Right.
Nintendo, like another product or console maker essentially.
Mhm.
And Microsoft's like, yeah, put this game out there. That's great. Like, put Minecraft dude on your Smash Brothers. I'm a little Master Chief thing. It'll be great.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, dude, totally, dude, yeah, like we'll totally put like Banjo-Kazooie since we own him and he was on Nintendo and we understand it's like all that stuff. So like Namco, I think would work pretty well with Nintendo, even if it was a more of a co-op kind of created game. Like I could definitely see Nintendo shipping a few guys over to the Namco studios and vice versa. Almost building a team out of their perspective, talented developers and saying, all right, guys, we're all here, we're all together, we're making a new team for this project, and we're going to have fun. And picking a project lead and making a real good cooperative project and making this game. And it would be really interesting to see what came out of it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Square Enix and Microsoft because, there was and I'm going to call it the middle time of Nintendo, where there was a lot of developers that kind of jumped ship. Square Enix is definitely one of those. Like, since after Super Nintendo, Square Enix did not want to touch Nintendo for the longest time until later on. I think it was was this GameCubes with the Final Fantasy Chronicles and all these little spin-offs, but never did traditional stuff, right? And then that also includes Sega. Sega started coming with them too on a bunch of stuff. GameCube was a very weird connection to bring back everybody to them, but the 64, that was all in-house. It was like all us or nothing, right, kind of thing, right? It's almost like it's almost like the Dreamcast, except Sega just did not get help. They're like, man, we're running out of breath, and we're going down with the ship. But Nintendo, they managed to hold their own ground during the 64 era by themselves with a bunch of in-houses because they developed a lot of people. They had a lot of developers under them. Rare was one of their biggest triumphs at the time, Yeah,
exactly. And see, a part of that was because they chose to go with cartridges again.
That's true too.
And that was one reason why Square stepped back, because a lot of their projects, especially the new Final Fantasy project 7, was like, man, our project is bigger scope than this, and we're going to go over here to Sony, team up with them and make some games. And yeah, Nintendo took that pretty hard, man. They're like, hey, where you going, man? We've been making games for a long time. And they're like, sorry, guys, but man, those CDs hold a lot,
Right.
And what's interesting is that, no, as you said, Nintendo, for the most part, as you said, was a lot of in-house. We had a couple of collaborative projects in there. But one of the coolest things that happened on that system, like Capcom did a port of Resident Evil 2 on the N64.
Yep.
And how is that even possible?
Yep.
Like, that game is massive.
Yep. Even Mega Man Legends. Even Mega Man Legends. It was Mega Man 64. Yep. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, how do you guys even do? But like, they did it. They hung in there. But then, they started slowly building back up those relationships. And really, when you sell a lot of consoles, even if your console's not the most accessible or powerhouse of a console, look at the Wii. They had a lot of partnerships with a lot of people. You had Call of Duties that were on the Wii.
Yes.
And I don't think any of these Call of Duties were on the Wii or selling gangbusters, but they still put it on there because there was over 100 million Wiis sold. So they know there's going to be people out there 100 million people who have this console, and we're going to put this game on there, even if it's kind of a, watered down version of the ones we put on PS3 and 360.
Mm-hmm.
But they still do it, And the same can be said for like the DS. A lot of trashware, a lot of all that stuff you just kind of shovel through, but they just put all that on there because there's so many DSs out there. There's so many Wiis, and now thankfully the Switch is. It's over 60 million. They've surpassed Super Nintendo numbers. So it's like the Switch is going to be a real big success. And even though here lately, you're seeing games, like you said earlier, not getting put on there like like Tony Hawk's or the Mass Effects or anything like that. And you want them to be. It makes you wonder if like there are certain technical reasons why they don't want to put the money into it. Or, they're like, well, we already have this game going over there. We have this game going over there. This one will be cool, but we have to put more money into it versus the money that it would probably sell, probably not worth it. But if Nintendo were able to come out with an upgraded version, you could get those other games. But on the same side, as I said, if they come out with a Switch Pro or Switch 2, you're not going to be able to. There's only you're going to run into the same issue that you had with the new 3DS, and you had like 3 games that were only playable on the new 3DS, the Xenogear or not Xenogears.
No, Xenoblade Chronicles.
Xenoblade Chronicles and Minecraft on the 3DS
Monster Hunter generation.
Only for the new 3DS. If you had a regular 3DS, it's not going to play it. You're SOL. So you had to have the right one. So you had to have that many more out there to justify putting the games out there. It's a whole. It makes you interested in seeing why they make the decisions they make sometimes with where to put a game versus the cost of cost of development. Because the fact that the Switch is pretty similar overall to the Xbox One and PS4 development, not cycle, but the system or it shares a lot of the same parts and aspects and programs, chips, whatever. It's easier to do that than what it was ever in the past. So you are seeing. That's why you're seeing ports galore of old Resident Evil games that came out on the PS3 and they're doing HD remakes and just put them on there anyway, because why not? Because we're already making them work for the Xbox One base console and base PS4. It wouldn't be that much more work, but it's just
that's a whole different conversation too. That could be something to really talk about, because you're even excluding xCloud. That's a thing now for the Switch that developers can do for that too. You can look at Control. The Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Resident Evil 3, in Japan-wise, those were released, not here. But to circle back to Namco or Bandai Namco, I think they would be a great pick for kind of just help lay out the field that is 1080, and you kind of, like you said, get that co-op work together instead of take this property and then bring us back the results. I would love for them to kind of work together, kind of like Koei Tecmo with Hyrule Warriors or something like that.
Yeah.
Come together. They can just let Nintendo kind of direct, but let Namco do the work for it. And I think you might have something really special there. And so.
No, I absolutely agree with you, because there's a lot of great teams out there and a lot of great devs out there that can make great games. But when you have a group of guys like Nintendo that know what they want from the get-go, and sometimes direction is all you need. It's like, you said the Koei Tecmo thing with Hyrule Warriors. They're coming up with Hyrule Warriors 2. It's a prequel to Breath of the Wild. Story-wise, it goes with that story. And how cool is that we're going to get more Breath of the Wild story that isn't another just Zelda game. It's going to be a Warriors game.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. And you're not going to be able to tell that story without having Nintendo completely involved and saying, this is okay, yeah, don't do this, maybe not that. But then, hey, the rest of it looks cool. Keep it up, because this is really fun to see you guys work on this.
Yeah. So, and the last thing I want to add to all 3 of these games, they should be about $30 or $40. Don't make them $60. And if you want to make them digital only, I'm fine with that too. If you want to save, shipments or making the game on something, that's fine too. But these game choices are fun in moments to me, so they should not be $60. They should be maybe $40 or $30 to me. That way you don't have to waste so much development, and you can add on to it. You can add onto it later.
Man, if you want to do a limited run style release, you do limited that. For those hardcore collectors, hey, so that way the new Excitebike guys, I got my Excitebike shrine of my inbox Excitebike. I got this one, and I got Excitebikes. Because I really like how limited run games does their stuff, and they just that would be cool. Over the summer, we did that Star Wars episode. They did a whole new release of Shadows of the Empire for N64.
That's right, I saw that. Yeah.
They had a collector's box. They made a whole new cartridge for the N64 to play on your system. It is the same game, but which you could go out and you can find at a local game store used for $6-8. But it's just the fact of the love they put into it with this big collector's box. If you wanted to get that with a brand new cartridge with some enamel pins, with some posters, limited run's pretty cool. And I believe I bought a game off of them once before. I got Night Trap.
That's right. I remember you mentioned that. Yeah.
I got Night Trap from them. So that's a cool. I wish more companies worked with them because it would be cool to see because like Nintendo, I do believe like they did their Mario 3D collection,
Mm-hmm.
and they're only going to sell it both on this. This is ridiculous. So they're only going to sell physical copies from September until March, right? September 2020 to March 21, and it's only going to be available on the digital store from September to March.
Yeah,
why would you do that?
I don't know. It's that, you know, honestly, there is on, if you go to polygon.com, they managed to do an interview with Doug Bowser, and they kind of talk about why that decision was made. And I'm not going to lie, you're not going to find any gold mine in there, but they try their best to kind of explain why is this a limited time and whatnot. It's actually a really interesting article because the interviewer really hit him with some hard questions, even challenging him about what about the people that, you know, got a Switch and they want to get that game. You know, it kind of sucks that they're not going to be able to get that copy. You know, I would recommend Brendan reading on it. It's a really good article. He really hit the hard questions on him. And so,
yeah, because all right, so like if the game is no longer available in any fashion, then those physical copies that have already sold are gonna, then that used market for those are just gonna go way up. Mm-hmm. And it's just like I don't understand. Like I gotta understand the physical copies. It'll be like we're only gonna make physical copies for 6 months, but why not just keep it on the e-store no matter how long? Because then it's like they just stay on there, and you keep it at full price because they don't ever lower their prices from Mario stuff or Pokemon or Zelda. They don't ever go down. You know, it's not like it can't just stay $50 forever in a day. I mean,
I don't think you ever bought a Nintendo game before. Nintendo games prices do not go down.
No, they do not, man. Mm-hmm. And even used, man, going out there trying to find, like right now on the regular DS. Not 3DS, just the DS. Like, I want to find that Pokemon game that was awesome on the DS. It's $50.
Yep.
Used.
Yup.
What is that? But I mean, it just, I don't understand that. Like, why the limit? Like, so like if these games, 1080, Excitebike, Wave Race, they're going to be on the store, and I would want them to be on the store for, even if the physical copies only went for 6 months, just stay on the damn store for $40.
Yeah. Dude, I don't think you have to worry about it. I mean, there is a big following for these games, but not big enough where a limited time is going to really skyrocket with these games. Let's be honest here. They're going to be like, these are awesome. Hell, I wouldn't mind if it was a triple pack and it was limited time, that makes more sense. If it was a triple pack, you get all of them. All these remastered or whatever, $40. Yeah, I understand if you want to do a limited time for that. It's still terrible, but I understand that. But if they're separate, like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Woo! All right, so that is the end of this episode. This is our longest episode because we had to talk about 3 great games on the N64. And I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode, but it ain't over. We got a whole year of 2021 worth of picks of games for you, so I can't wait for you to be surprised with the picks that we have. But honestly, this is only like, I think, our 10th episode, I want to say, or something like that. So you got time to go back and listen to our other episodes and hear all the other picks we have. Like Brandon's Soul Blazer to my Metal Storm. You know, like there's a lot of interesting picks that we did and a lot of interesting developers that we picked in between and our reasons behind it. Actually, it makes me want to go back and listen to some of the episodes and talk to Brandon again. Like, remember you picked this developer? You still feel good about them now? You know, whatever. But remember, we are part of the In-Game Boss program, a network game and other variety shows. So check out all our great shows that you can find on Podbean, you know, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you know, all those great listening spots. And there you can listen to all our great shows. My main podcast, the In-Game Boss podcast, along with YouTube shows like the Katniss Sessions and Buddy Up Gaming and our movie podcast and whatnot. We are a network of full great content. Hopefully we have more on the way for you, so you got more stuff for you. But that's not it. Brandon got some content for you too.
Hell yeah, man. We got the Game Addicts podcast. It's on all those places that he mentioned, as well as on YouTube, where we got some video content, some gameplay stuff that I've done too from the Mass Effect series, and I did a playthrough of the Final Fantasy VII remake, and I got some Metal Gear stuff on there as well. But I want to get through that series as well. But you can check it out at GameAddictsPodcast.com, where you can check out the Podbean page and you know, do all that stuff and comment along too. Let me know. Reach out on social media at Game Addicts Play, Facebook and Twitter. Let me know about what you think, and especially when the new episode comes out, because there's going to be some new ones coming out. I haven't done some in a little bit. I got some new stuff, and I'm excited to share it with you guys.
Okay, and then you can find me on personally RetroAmp07 or at Program In on Twitter, capital P, capital E. And then remember, both of our shows are also on Facebook. So definitely check us out on Facebook and leave comments and all that fun jazz. And with that, thank you so much. And we'll catch you on our next trade show display.